It's open season. Why don't you have someone shoot? I'm hoping. Are you ready to start?
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Municipal Council meeting of Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Just a word of announcement for those who may be watching our YouTube live stream. We are having some camera difficulties today, and they are not likely going to be resolved before we finish our meeting. So just to say that if the screen goes blank, we will still talk and our meeting will continue. So stay tuned. The camera may come back on when we move to a different speaker. So just recognizing that we do have an issue with that this morning. And I would remind councillors to turn their mics off, and that's a reminder to myself. We can't have two on at the same time because that may also exacerbate the problem. So with those announcements, we will begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Are there announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions? Hearing none, we will move to public input, and we don't have anyone in the gallery today. It's too nice a day. Everyone is either at the beach or in their garden or at work. But we encourage people to come to our meetings. We do allow time at the beginning of each meeting for public input. It is valuable. We appreciate that very much. We also appreciate that people just show up to hear what's going on. But of course, you can tune in. Our live stream YouTube video is recorded, and our meetings are with audio recording. We do have regrets from Councillor Oikel and Councillor DeLong today. We should have a motion to approve the agenda. If someone would make that motion, please.
Tamara McLean-Weil and members of the council, I move to accept the agenda, today's agenda. Did I say that wrong?
And a seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Burns. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We do have minutes from June the 10th, the public hearing and development agreement, and we will take, we'll approve those. If there are any additions or corrections to those, I don't see any, we'll approve those as circulated. And also on June 10th, the minutes from the public hearing on the Osprey Village Planning Agreement. Are there any errors or omissions there? I don't see anyone making note of that, so we will approve those as circulated. Business arising from the minutes, I don't think we have any today. We'll move to awarding of tenders and RFPs. 7.1, which is the award of RFP 2025-01402, Saw Pit Wharf Park, Design, Construction, and Contract Administration Services. Maria Butts will lead us in this. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. So last year, the municipality secured Mills and Wright Landscape Architecture to carry out community consultation and prepare a community plan with options for Saw Pit Wharf Park development. Of the options that were produced from that plan, the overall concept was selected for implementation. So this RFP was issued to secure an engineering design firm to provide detailed design based on that overall concept plan that was presented by Mills and Wright. In addition, the selected firm would prepare a tender package for Saw Pit Wharf once detailed design was complete and issue the tender with support. And after a tender was awarded, if that was a decision made by council, they would be responsible for construction oversight services of the works as well. So this RFP was issued on May 22nd and closed on June 12th. 4 proposals were received and accepted by the deadline. The received and accepted proposals are laid out in the report for council. A staff committee evaluated all of the proposals based on set parameters, and each of the parameters were assigned a weighting. So we had understanding of the project, proposed work schedule, methodology, project team and references, and then a portion of the evaluation was related to the cost proposal from each proponent. So of the 4 proposals that were submitted, EXP Services Inc. received the highest overall ranking and has been identified as the proponent that will provide the best value for the municipality for the services that were identified under the RFP. I should note that allowance for the cost of the project has been included in the approved 2025-26 capital budget with allocated funding of $200,000. EXP Services Inc. costs associated with this fiscal year's services for design and tender support total $194,080 excluding HST. Awarding the RFP to EXP Services will enable us to work towards having a design package ready to tender in 2026 for the development of Sawpit Work Park and ensure a high-quality product is constructed in accordance with all applicable standards and regulations.
Thank you. We can take questions if you need clarification on any part of this tender, and then we'll go to the motion. Is there anyone with questions on this? Would someone propose the motion then? Deputy Mayor Vino.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council award RFP 2025-01-402 Sawpit Wharf Park Design, Construction, and Contract Administration Services to EXP Services Incorporate in the amount of $489,642, excluding HST, and I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Bell. Is there discussion on the motion? Deputy Mayor Vino.
I just wanted to add on behalf of the community and the committee for Sawpit Wharf, it's great to see this next step happen in this project. This really was community driven, and we've had a lot of consultation with the community, and I'm excited to report back that we've gone to the next step and look forward to seeing what this brings about. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We will move to 7.2, which is the award of an RFQ for 2024-01-307 Municipal App.
Good morning, Council. So as discussed back when this council set their strategic priorities with enhanced communication and public engagement as a priority, we talked about implementing a municipal app. So we created an RFQ to go out looking for the services that we wanted out of an app and put that out to the public, and we received 1 bid. So that is what we're expecting. There's not many service providers creating municipal apps out there. So the 1 bid was received from a company called 14 Orange. And this product will allow us to create news, public notices, emergency alerts, community events, all listed on the app, and send direct notifications right to our residents' phones. It also allows staff to be fully in control of updating the content, so we're not waiting on a service provider to get back to us. We can update content live and throughout the whole organization. Different people can be responsible for updating the app. We'll also have resident engagement features right in the app, like surveys and feedback forms or service request submissions, and we'll be able to see usage metrics. And then it is a secure Canadian site with Canadian hosting for data protection, so it meets the requirements set by our IT department. And it provides staff training and ongoing support. So that bid was received by 14 Oranges Software in Vancouver, which services several Canadian municipalities. The cost per year is roughly $10,000 with support fees ranging from $6,000 to $13,000 for an annual fee, licensing and support. We won't really know until after the first year what kind of level of support we think we need, but I do think it'll be on the lower side of
that. Questions on this? Councillor Smith and then Councillor Brooks.
We did speak a little bit about Digby and what they're using. They recently started using Alertable, I think they just launched that in the past month. And I spoke to a counselor last night, and he was quite enthusiastic about it. And one of the features that I really appreciated about that, and the reason that they went with it, was the ability to push out notifications to landlines. And that has been something that I thought is kind of important to consider in my area. You know, not everybody has smartphones or even cell phone service at this point. And the ability to push out notifications about events, consultations to a landline is really interesting. So, yeah, I just wonder if you've looked into Alertable, what are the options that they provide? Speaking to the counselor last night, I think he said that the package they went with was about $6,000 a year. But maybe it doesn't have all the capabilities that we're looking for as a council.
Yeah, it really doesn't have most of the capabilities that we're looking for out of a municipal app with a general communications lens. It is an emergency response app. So after we spoke last night, I downloaded it, and I downloaded it for a few different, put in my, as if I lived in a number of different communities, and it is really very much specifically an emergency response app. So it doesn't have the other functionalities that I could see, or maybe those municipalities aren't using it in that way. But I'd be very hesitant to cross over into this. When you ask permission for someone to give them an update, there's a real big difference in an emergency update to their phone versus, hey, we're having a public engagement event tonight. So it would require a lot more research. But I think it's definitely something our REMO organization would be interested in looking into. And I'm not sure if they actually have before. Alex might be able to speak to that.
Actually, the province is in the process of developing an emergency notification app on top of the intrusive alert system that's in place. To date, REMO hasn't looked at that because different units have their own apps. And so it wasn't felt like it was a good use of the collaborative resources to do something that would duplicate what half of the units were already doing.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I do think that there are different capabilities of that app depending on the package that you choose. So my understanding from Digby is that it's more than an emergency app. It has more notifications, more capabilities than strictly emergency notifications. And I guess I'm just thinking, does it hurt at this point just to take a look at it?
So I'm not as familiar with procurement rules, so I'm going to defer to Alex to that one because we did only receive the one response for this.
Yeah, that is a challenge for us. If council's not satisfied with the product that's before us, we could go away and have another look at that, but we'd need advice from our procurement specialist as well as our solicitor to make sure that we weren't running afoul of the Provincial Procurement Act. It would give the appearance of bid shopping if we submitted or published a request for quotes or proposals and then reissued a very similar one in a short period of time. That's usually the sort of thing that attracts complaints from vendors.
My understanding was that an RFQ doesn't have those same rules as an RFP. So maybe someone could advise on that.
So yes, just on that, under our procurement policy, also purchasing and tendering policy, the RFQ is an informal approach to getting quotes as opposed to a tender or an RFP, which are more formal and can create the contract A, contract B situation. But as Alex has indicated, if council isn't satisfied with the number of responses or the response or the cost, it's certainly free for council to send us back to look at something else. The Alertable folks didn't send us any information to indicate that they were interested in providing us a service. And I don't know how Digby arrived at that. I don't know if they went in through any procurement process to acquire that service. I did look it up, and it does seem to have a feature beyond just emergency notifications about events and things going on in town. And when you go on their website and hit their link, it takes you to a alertable, I think it says Town of Digby alertable, and that's what you sign up for. So there may be some features, but we didn't explore it because they didn't respond to the RFQ.
Councillor Brooks.
Just wondering if you can tell me what the process will be sort of at the end of the year time for evaluation, if that'll be a collective staff council, let's take a look at how this thing worked and did it meet our needs?
Sure. So it would probably be treated much like our other services we use, like our Engage site, where we're not sitting and analyzing every single year, is this meeting our needs, but we look at it over time. Like, do we feel like we're hearing from residents? Do we feel like we need a change? Is it not meeting our needs anymore? But I could certainly bring back a report as part of when we look at our strategic priorities each year and we say, how did we accomplish? How many people attended events? That's something you'll hear in what we heard reports. So we could certainly bring back and say, how many people downloaded it? Are people clicking the links? We can see all this with Google Analytics with this app. Yeah.
And also just if we can offer the community an opportunity to also give us their feedback on their experience as well.
The nice thing about that app is they could give it right in there as well. Like they can do quick ratings of, I find this app useful. What are suggestions for the app? But it would also be important to reach out to people and say, why aren't you using the app, right? So through Municipal Matters, through other forums, and reach, like, why aren't you using it? Do you not know about it? Do you just not like apps? When we have the data in from our Municipal Matters survey, it hasn't come to council yet. I'm working on the What We Heard report, but a significant number of people said they would not download an app because they don't want more apps. But sometimes people say that and then they change their mind when their neighbor is using it and their neighbor tells them about it. So yeah, we would definitely solicit their opinions.
If we could, address Councillor Smith's concern, if there's a way to capture any of that information for people to say, I just simply am not connected, or I would appreciate it if there was something that gave my landline connection, just so we got some numbers of what the impact did. Yeah, thank you.
The nice thing about doing an app through a service like this where you pay a small fee up front and then it's a licensing is you don't feel quite as tied to something that you paid, $400,000 to develop a custom app, and then you feel tied to it for the rest of your, for 20 years. Like at any point we can say, we're going to switch to this app over here, and any competitors, typically, for instance, our Engage site, the major competitor, they do a full transition process for free if we were to switch to that other app. So I imagine that Alertable might have something similar where they can just transition us pretty easily if we decided in a year to switch to that app.
Just on this point that Councillor Smith has raised, because I think there is an issue with landlines and not having cell phone, and in some of the situations we've had throughout Nova Scotia, the issue has been that you often hear is people who didn't get the alert, get an emergency, or don't get a message because for some reason they don't get a message. So I just want to go back to our Deputy CAO to get a little clarification on what our emergency measures activities in the province are really doing on this, because I didn't quite follow what you said in terms of what improvements might be made to alerts, because I'm thinking that for people with landlines, how that's going to get captured. So can you just clarify that? Because I think it may address what Councillor Smith is saying. And I think if it doesn't, then I think over time we do need to think about how we can address that. It is part of our advocacy around cell service. We would include this in that conversation. But
yes, you touched on a number of factors there. So the federal and provincial governments work together on the intrusive alert system. So that's if you've heard your phone make a bunch of awful noises and jiggle about, and then you get the little urgence symbol and the statement. So they're called intrusive because they can inject themselves into radio broadcasts, into television broadcasts. They go to any mobile phone once it's connected to a cellular tower. Apparently it doesn't work and if your phone is on Wi-Fi calling, which many of our residents use because they can use the internet from their home or their workplace to connect their phone to the to be able to operate. But the intrusive alert system works on the cellular network, and so some people end up getting those notices later because they're not connected to a network, and then they connect to a network and then they get the alert. But sometimes the situation is already resolved before they get that alert. A way to improve that is to improve cell service. So you're absolutely right. Improving advocacy, or us advocating for improved cell service, will improve the reach of those signals getting to phones. In addition to that, the province is now working on developing an emergency notification app. So it would be similar to an alertable type app, and the intention is to people to voluntarily sign up so that they can get additional information about emergencies that are happening, and it would work regardless of whether you're on Wi-Fi or whether you're on a cellular signal. I don't know if it will have the ability to push to landlines. I'm assuming if that type of service is available by some providers, that's something that they will look at, and it's certainly something we can pass up through the provincial emergency management field staff to make sure that that happens.
I do think it is a kind of a critical piece in this, because there's still a number of people with landlines, and because they can't get good cell service, and until we get that cell service issue resolved, which I don't expect is going to be in the short term, meaning next couple of years to 3 to 5 maybe. I don't know what short term means, but I think it is a critical issue.
Yeah, I mean, I just raise it because I would love to see a comparison. And if there's no issue with the RFQ getting us into trouble, just looking at what another municipality is doing, you know, I understand, like Digby, I don't think has a communications department. So maybe what they're looking at is for something less complex. But this issue of landlines, it's not just people don't have cell phones. A lot of my residents don't use email either. So being able to, like, if you're having a consultation in a community, and you can send out, people have signed up for a landline notification of when we're doing something in their community, they'll get a call. You know, the call will go out to everyone in that area about the consultation. And I just thought, you know, that's a really handy feature and really addresses equity in our district. And I think those are important things to consider when we're looking at, you know, developing an app. So, I mean, I'd be perfectly happy to support, you know, this other proposal that has come in, but I just think as far as due diligence, and I hadn't even really known that there was this option of reaching people by landline through an app like that. So I'll rest my case, but I would definitely favor just taking a look.
I think I'm looking for direction today. Do you want to have the motion as presented, or are you proposing another motion? I'm looking to the chair.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I would be really interested in learning more about that alertable system, because I think reaching people on landlines is a really key piece of communications in general. And if there's a way to maybe not move on this motion today and get some more information on that, I would appreciate it. I think it's really important, and I didn't know that I didn't know that you could reach landlines with push notifications. So,
Councillor Hubley.
I agree with what everyone's saying around the table, and I would also like more information, but I would also like to see us move forward with this app and maybe get information separately. I have the Town of Bridgewater app on my phone, and I use it for traffic. I use it for everything. So I think that what is presented here is also very useful to our residents. So if it's possible to move ahead but still get the information, that's what I would like to see happen.
So if I could suggest that we ask for that to to get a little more information around this and bring this back to our next council meeting, and we can consider it then, if that seems reasonable.
I'm sure it's probably very quick for me to get the information from Alertable and be able to compare and contrast. It's just looking for the direction from council and making sure Tom's okay with it as a lawyer.
We'll check the process to make sure we're compliant with what we need to, but I think what we're asking for is a kind of a short turnaround on this, that not be delayed too long, like to our next council meeting, and come back, and then we can make a decision how we want to proceed. And that's only a couple of weeks, so I think we're okay. I'm not seeing anybody. Councillor Bell, did you want to speak, or?
I just wanted to say that the cost to develop the app, the town of Bridgewater had did it for a considerably less cost. I'm not sure I'm allowed to tell you what.
Yeah, the town of Bridgewater does it in-house. They have a staff member that has an audiovisual background, so they're, and a computer science sort of bent. I do not have that, unfortunately.
You have other skills. So I think I'm generally getting a vibe here that we're going to ask for more information, make sure we're compliant with our procurement policies, and we'll bring it back to the next council meeting. Okay? So let's move on the agenda to 7.3, which is the award of an RFQ 2024-01306 for mobile AV services.
Sure. So again, from direction of council, strategic priority to enhance communications and public engagement, looking to return to doing council and the community meetings. We did them many, many years ago, pre-COVID, I think, but although I think we did do one not long after when we were able to convene again. So we would take this council meeting on the road 3 to 4 times a year out in the community, rent a hall and have a council meeting. We did sort of, we used AV services previously, and then we tried to DIY it, and there was a spectacular failure to DIY it. So we looked to bring in AV services. This would allow each council member at a table to have a mic, to have proper sound for the people in the hall, and then to be able to stream those meetings to ensure that we're not losing the streaming function when we're out in communities. It does make it a little more challenging. Not every hall can accommodate the AV services. Some of them you find over the last few weeks when we've done municipal-wide planning, some of them are very echoey. Some of them have mixed AV services. Some of them don't have high enough internet speed, but we've been going out and testing the internet speed at each of them to develop a list of where we can and cannot do council in the community. So there's definitely several locations we can make it happen. The pricing we've received is $5,500 per meeting. You can see in the report, it includes the services of several staff members to come, to set up, to run the show, and then to pack it up, and then troubleshoot in the moment that AV. I mean, we have a permanent AV set up here, and it still requires a lot of troubleshooting, as we're seeing today. So we are looking to have professionals come out and do this for us.
Questions? Okay, would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Brooks.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of the council, I move that the Municipal Council award RFQ 2024-01-306 mobile AV services to Advanced Systems in the amount of $5,506.20, including net HST, for audio and visual equipment and streaming services for each mobile council in community meeting within the District of Lunenburg. I so move.
A seconder for the motion, seconded by Councillor Reinhardt. Is there a discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Smith.
I'm just curious about where we can and can't do this, and I think, you know, my hope with this, the mobile meetings, is that we're getting further out, away from our central spot. Are we going to be able to do that with this service in
That's the hope.
The
So-
places you've located?
Yeah, so for instance, we couldn't do Blockhouse. Like, that venue was too tiny. Even with just 8 people in that room, not even on mics, you could not hear a thing. But Mahone Bay Center is right there, so we could do that. So we've got a venue list. Some districts have 4 or 5 locations in each district. Some, our list only has 1. So as we proceed in the next few years of booking these, we would look to the counselor and say, we only have 1 community center here. Do you know of another venue that might work? Maybe there's possibly private businesses that have like enough seating, maybe churches. Like, we could go a little beyond what we've done before. On my way to Riverport last night, I drove by several large churches, and some I think do concerts, so they would probably be suitable. And we have done that before in the past for council other types of meetings. So we want to hit every district. The goal is to have ultimately, over the course of a 4 or 5 year 4-year term, to get to every district, and we would do our best to do that. We would definitely not just say, well, we think it's too small, we're not going to go there.
And to that, just further, it's not directly related, but our planning for those meetings will be to try to include in the agenda items that are particularly relevant to various areas and allow that to be well promoted so that there is some reason to attract people that might be more interested in that particular topic. So that's all part of the planning around this. So any other discussion on the motion? Councillor Brooks.
Just as a footnote for us, that in our advocacy for cell phone service, this is absolutely part of the piece, because I'm sure it's fiber that you're needing for upload.
Yeah, we need a certain amount of fiber Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as outlined on the award of RFQ for mobile AV services indicate by raising their hands, please. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, we don't have any presentations this morning and no consideration of correspondence. We'll move to recommendations from committees and boards. Our policy and strategy meeting last week, June 17th, we had discussion on the following 3 items, and on uranium exploration in LaHave watershed area, we had a staff report and a public input and a motion that's referred to us today, which is in your package on page 12. And we have a motion on that as well. If someone would like to propose that motion as referred to us from Policy and Strategy, Councillor Smith.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council write a letter to the Premier of Nova Scotia and the Minister of Natural Resources requesting the province reinstate the moratorium and undertake robust public engagement on whether to proceed with uranium exploration after publicly sharing a risk assessment and cost-benefit analysis.
And a seconder, Councillor Bell. And the floor is open for discussion on the motion. Councillor Smith, did you want to lead the discussion?
I do have a few things that I would like to put on the record. I think that this is probably going to be the last time we'll speak about uranium for a bit. I just wanted to reiterate, my gratitude to staff for the excellent report they brought last week. The importance of the report underlining the inherent risks of uranium exploration and mining in our watershed really highlights the lack of balanced information that we're receiving from the province. And as I've said before, it really baffles me that the province thinks it's appropriate to lift a ban that's been in place for 44 years with quite flimsy justifications about benefits and little to no recognition of the risks. I've seen the letter that was sent to landowners in the immediate RFP area, and it doesn't address the very reasonable concerns that people have about risks of exploration activities on their land or how those activities would be regulated by the province. The letter states, "We hope that Nova Scotians consider the economic and health benefits of exploration as they consider the request of a company. This has been one of the talking points of the government, that with more information from the mining industry telling us where the uranium is, we can protect our health. We know that there is uranium here, and I've spoken to many residents who remember companies doing the exploration in the 80s. But despite the information we have, there's been no serious push from the province to take measures like, say, free water well testing in high-risk areas. So it's pretty hard for people to take that argument seriously. It feels like an argument of convenience, and I can tell you at the public meetings about uranium, the line about health benefits of exploration doesn't get more than cynical laughter from people at those meetings. A second argument that the province has sent out in response to concerned residents is that the ban was removed so we could have an informed, healthy conversation. Again, this is convenient. The PCs weren't willing to have the conversation during an election when the public would have had some leverage. And in some ways, I really don't think that an early snap election during an American election would have led to a very informed conversation. If the province wants to have that conversation, I do think we should have it with the ban in place, with the information that's available. But you can't have a healthy conversation when people are scrambling around to find information about RFPs in their backyards or feeling like it's all a foregone conclusion. Residents in my area definitely want to have that conversation. They're organizing public meetings so that they can inform themselves, but the province isn't showing up to that conversation or adding to it in any meaningful way. And the last point I'll mention is that as justification, the province has been doubling down on Nova Scotia's GDP per capita numbers. The worst in North America, it says. It's a crisis and we need to open our doors for all development. And this is the taking the no out of Nova Scotia. There's no question that we need economic development, and I'm really happy to be part of a council that has this as one of our strategic priorities. We're working on it. But this crisis narrative suggests that social license is irrelevant and that consultation with the Mi'kmaq seems like an afterthought. And ironically, among the many things that a calculation of GDP per capita does not take into consideration is the health of our environment. So you could have all kinds of damage to our watershed through uranium exploration and mining, but as long as more goods and services are being produced, GDP per capita will go up. I don't think it should be the only measuring stick for how we're doing, what we value, and how we make decisions about the future of this province. And that's what I've been hearing from residents, and thank you for letting me put it on the record today. And as this motion suggests, we need a much more complex, informed conversation with the province.
Are there others that wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Brooks.
I'm just curious about how it's written, because it feels like we're asking two things with this motion. I don't know if it needs to be written a little bit differently, but we're asking for the province to reinstate the moratorium, and we're asking them to publicly share a risk assessment and have a robust public process. I don't know if it needs to have chronology inserted in there so that one follows the other, but one is almost in contradiction of the other. So I'm just trying to, I don't know if it needs clarification on the motion.
I think our conversation last week, it was raised that we needed to stop to ask for the moratorium to be put back in place, because that already existed. There was a long history associated with the development of the moratorium and getting to that stage in legislation. And then recognizing that a need to look at risk and benefits that then provides a solid base on which to make a decision. and it put facts on the table. I think that it's clear here that for our record, asking for risks and benefits also opens it up for risks and benefits on other resource development. We set a precedent in our motion here to do that, and I think that's important because we know that the government, our provincial government, has made this a strong mandate in the last couple of months to look at resource development. And I think in incorporating this into the resolution, it does put us on record to say we think that in future resource development, exploration, whatever it may be, that we need to have those facts presented to us. So I think it does frame us from a council point of view for future discussion, which I expect will come back to us. And I think also we're not saying no to everything. We are saying no to uranium looking at the moratorium. That's a definite no. But the risks and benefits of future development, I think, are captured here as well. And if we had to come back to a discussion around this, we've set ourselves up to present that in a way that I think is quite reasonable in looking at facts and weighing those benefits out if it comes to what we look at in forestry or in the resource development of our oceans and seafood, or some of our other natural resources, which are part of what we consider resources here, but have never really surfaced much in the conversation yet. It's focused on mining. So I know that was a long answer, but I just want to be clear about how I think it frames it up for us, and I think that's important because I think we'll have to come back to this. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And just in closing on that, there hasn't been a meeting that I've gone to in the since this came out, that this has not been raised. So it's not just in Councillor Smith's district. It is pretty widespread in our municipality. I think I've heard from people in almost all the districts. And so I think I'm glad we were able to work this through our system, and we'll get the letter off to the Premier today. We will move to 10.1.2. I think that's next. Let me just check. Yes, which is the Food Hub feasibility study. And again, this was discussed at our policy and planning strategy last week. We had a presentation from the consultants involved in it and a recommendation from staff regarding this. And I would appreciate if somebody would put this motion on the floor. Councillor Burns.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and not pursue the opportunity of a food hub in the District of Lunenburg.
A seconder for the motion, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vino. Is there discussion on the motion? The only comment I will add for the record is that the research and documents that were associated with leading to this decision will be available to the public. So if there are groups in our community that feel that they would like to embark on Food Hub and investigate that from the grassroots level and not from our level down, but from the ground up, our economic development staff, Mr. Waters, and Mr. Strickland, who presented the report, are glad to share that information, and we'll make it available to anyone in our community who might be interested in exploring the ideas around a food hub. We know that there were lots of people at the meetings. I think our conclusion last week was that this really needs to be driven from the ground up, as opposed to us looking for how we would lead an initiative in this area. So we are open to sharing that information, and I think that's important to have on the record. We will move then to the final recommendation from Policy and Strategy is amendments. Oh, sorry. All those in favor of the motion to on the Food Hub, motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We will move then to the final recommendation, which is amendments to Policy 043, Community Grants, Programs, and Sponsorship Request. And if we could have that motion put on the floor for discussion. Councillor Reinhardt.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and approve the proposed amendments to Policy 043, Community Grants Program Sponsorship Request as presented, and I so move.
And a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is, raise your hands, please. Motion is carried with one negative vote to Councillor Brooks. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, motion is carried unanimously. And we will move to our dangerous and unsightly committees, 10.2. And these would be items that have been forwarded to us from the Danger and Unsightly Committee. And Jeff Marrow will come forward to lead us through the various recommendations here regarding unsightly premises.
Our dangerous unsightly administrators should be in a moment, but you stuck with me for the meantime. So the first one is the 447 Llewellyn Road, Middlewood, Nova Scotia. The committee's recommendation is to award the lowest bid from Fine Cuts Landscaping, and that's in the amount of $6,908.40. There are some photographs as part of the agenda on page 48, 49, 50, 51.
Can you just,
56.
for the record, just briefly summarize the process that we get to this recommendation?
Yeah, so we had a complaint that was received on this property. We carried out an initial inspection and considered that the site is deemed unsightly under the Municipal Government Act and the council's policy on dangerous unsightly properties. We sent a letter to the property owners advising of the unsightly condition and what was required to remedy the property. We did, after that 30-day period, we did do a follow-up inspection, which found no change in the condition of the unsightly property. As a result of that inspection, an order was issued. So that was back in June of 2024, and we provided the property owners 30 days to clean up that order. In that order, the action in that order was that the garbage, refuse, construction debris, 3 derelict vehicles, the RV, play structure, all old tires must be cleaned up and removed from the property. That order expired. Staff did a follow-up inspection. There was no change in the condition of the property. And we sent the file out for tender. That was in October, which the committee at the time, when they reviewed it the first time, agreed to issue an extension for the property. So staff went back out in January 2025. There was no change in the condition of the property. The committee did decide to go forward with bids under a previous tender. However, too much time had elapsed with the extension, and the contractor wasn't able to honor the original bid at that time. So we went back out and requested quotes again, and that's what's before you here. So the committee has reviewed those quotes and is recommending the lowest bid.
Would someone put the motion on the floor? Councillor Brooks.
Actually, I need to recuse myself for the next 3 motions, so I'm just going to step away from the table.
Okay. Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Counselor Bell.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Dangerous and Unsightly Committee and approve the lowest bid from Fine Cuts Landscaping for the cleanup of the property located at 447 Llewellyn Road, Middlewood, PID number 603-02270, in the amount of $6,060 plus HST, for a total of $6,908.40. I so move.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Counselor Burns. Discussion on the motion. Counselor Smith.
Just a point of clarification. In the package, it says 446 Llewellyn Road, and on our resolution sheet, it says 447, which is the
Yeah,
motion.
I can clarify, just
Okay.
when the original motion was typed, there was a typo. It was 446. It should be 447 is the correct one, and Councillor Bell did read the correct motion.
Further discussion. Counselor Reinhardt.
I was just wondering if, since the last time this came up, if there had been any communication from the property owners.
No.
Further discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please raise their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. Could we move then to 10.2.2?
So this is in regards to 59 Big Lots Road, Big Lots, property PID 602-21512. We recommend to committee that the lowest bid from Fine Cuts Landscaping be accepted for the cleanup of the property located at 59 Big Lots for $1,801. We received a complaint on June 28th in reference to the above noted property. An initial inspection was carried out July 9th of 2024, which concluded that the property is considered unsightly under the terms of the Municipal Government Act. On August 28th, a follow-up inspection was conducted, which found no change in the condition. Unfortunately, an order was not posted at that time, so therefore we did a follow-up inspection on January 9th. As a result of that inspection, a new order was issued on January 22nd, providing the property owner with 30 days to clean up the property. That order read, "It is hereby ordered that you are to, within 30 days of the service of this order, remedy the unsightly condition of the property, namely, action, the 2 derelict vehicles must be cleaned up and removed from the property." On February 24th, a follow-up inspection was conducted. No change was found, and on April 28th, a letter was sent outlining the updated cleanup assistance program, and we've had no response to that as well. So the quote, the current property is assessed at $264,500. The lot area is 0.46 acres, and at the time of presentation, the taxes had not yet been paid.
Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Deputy Mayor Vino.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Dangerous and Unsightly Committee and approve the lowest bid from Fine Cuts Landscaping for the cleanup of the property located at 59 Big Lots Road, Big Lots, PID 6022-1512, in the amount of $1,579.82 plus HST, for a total of $1,801, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. Is there a discussion on the motion? Counselor Smith.
Just to be clear, like our policy doesn't require actual like contact to be made. You know, like the letters go out, the notice gets posted, but if there's no one living in that house, if they are away, you know, and don't receive the messages, we just continue with the process. There's no actual necessity to make contact.
Oops. Okay, sure. By posting of the order, it's considered to be legal notice, so they're considered to be contacted at that point. And the letters were sent by registered mail and not returned, so they were delivered. So.
Counselor Bell.
Another fact that should be made is that this isn't something that's done in 2 weeks, a month. This has been drawn out over months, in some cases a year or more. So there should be no surprise to a property owner. And we've had examples where they've made multiple attempts to visit a property. In some cases, the people are home. They choose not to answer the door. So when it comes to this point, I am satisfied that every effort has been made to the property owners for contact.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We can move on to 10.2.3, which is Woodstock Road in Clearland.
So this is in relation to the property at 586 Woodstock Road in Clearland, PID 602-26925. So some background on this case is that the municipality received a complaint on April 5th, 2024, in reference to the above noted property. The initial site inspection was carried out on April 11th, 2024, which concluded that the property was considered dangerous and unsightly under the Municipal Government Act. Due to an administrative error, the initial letter was not sent. However, a follow-up inspection to restart the process was conducted on July 17th, 2024, which found no change to the condition of the property. As per policy MDL-07, a letter dated July 19th was sent to the property owners advising them of the dangerous and unsightly conditions of the property and the requirements to remedy the unsightly and dangerous conditions to bring it back to a safe and sightly condition. The letters were sent by both regular and registered mail to the address registered through PVSC and was returned with notice that delivery was unsuccessful. On August 27th, 2024, a follow-up inspection was conducted and found the building actively falling down. Another inspection was carried out on December 18th, 2024, and found further collapse of the building. Administration staff were directed to set up a committee meeting to request a demolition order. And on January 29th, 2025, as per the committee, we granted an order to demolish the house on the property. That order read, "It is hereby ordered that you are to, within 30 days of service of this order, remedy the dangerous and unsightly conditions of the property, namely action. To remedy the dangerous and unsightly conditions, the house must be demolished and the demolition debris cleaned up and totally removed from the property, along with all junk and debris scattered over the property, including vehicle parts, tires of various sizes, rims, junk, construction debris, old lumber, lawn mowers, household appliances, electronics, old tools, scrap metal, bathtubs, motors and parts, barbecues, derelict boat, and a derelict vehicle." The order was posted to the property on January 30th of 2025, and a follow-up inspection was carried out on March 3rd, 2025, and found that the building had completely collapsed. No cleanup has been done. Staff was directed to send out for quotes. So we brought that back to the Dangerous and Unsightly Committee. with the recommendation that committee recommends to council that we award the lowest bid from Fine Cuts Lawn Care and Landscaping be accepted to demolish the buildings and clean up the property located at 586 Woodstock Road, Clearland, for the amount of $17,174.
Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Moore.
Mayor McLean-Wall and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Dangerous and Unsightly Committee and approve the lowest bid from Fine Cuts Landscaping for the demolition and cleanup of the property located at 586 Woodstock Road, PID number 60226925, in the amount of $15,064.91 plus HST for a total of $17,174.
A seconder for the motion, seconded by Councillor Bell. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Reinhardt.
It's not exactly on this motion, but I just, in the bids that came up, there's two companies that just have a number, and it just looked a little, is that normal, or?
So there was two companies that that met all of the requirements for bidding on the job as per our policies. So the rest of them didn't make that cut, so that's why there was only two that were part of the actual tender.
I think.
Did that answer your question? I don't think that did.
No, I mean, in the list of companies that applied, most of them have a company name, but there are two that just come up as a number. So
Okay.
I was just wondering what that meant.
That's how they identified themselves, as a numbered company. That's how they came in on the bid.
It's a way that some companies don't necessarily apply a name. They would have, they'd be registered with joint stocks as a numbered company, and for whatever reason haven't identified a name with it. Yeah. Is there any further discussion or clarification needed on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. The final motion relates to discussion that came from Dangerous and Unsightly Property Committee, and that is around the policy we follow and the steps that staff take to deal with issues and complaints that are made. And it is a lengthy process, and there are ways in the conversation that was held at the committee, there are ways that staff feel we could streamline this and take and have this, if we have a policy in place, allow staff to execute the policy as it's set out and approved by council. This is asking for a review to look at how we might streamline that a bit more. Staff does have some ideas on that, and allow an opportunity for that to be brought back to the committee. So could I have somebody put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Moore.
Gladly. To Mayor McLean-Wall and members of council, I move that municipal council accept the recommendation of the Dangerous and Unsightly Committee and review the dangerous and unsightly process to identify ways to improve efficiency. The goal is to streamline operations by granting staff greater authority to act on files without requiring referral to the committee or council. The review should focus on reducing resolution times and ensuring staff can take timely action, and I so move.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Bell.
Currently, staff is restricted sometimes in acting because the dollar figures that they have to operate under are set too low. Same as recreation or other committees that we have reviewed. And I do think that part of those discussions need to be giving them greater authority to spend a greater amount of money without checking back through committee and council, because that in itself sometimes takes months, not weeks, and it creates issues and problems. So I hope that that can be part of the discussions.
Yeah, that was raised as well, and will become part of what we get back in terms of a staff review and recommendations back to us. So I think this helps to expedite some of the work and allows staff some more discretion in actually getting this work done, because it's difficult work, and I think it has been complicated by having it to come back to council and get referred back, and I think what we're looking for is to get this. And the people that make the complaints, it often is frustrating for them because they feel we're not acting on it, but it is the process we have in place now that slows it down to the extent that we can't respond in a way that really addresses the complaint in a timely way, but also respects the need of the homeowner, property owner, to do the work that needs to be done as well. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing this review, and I agree that changes need to be made regarding efficiency. For the person who has had the order, it also doesn't help if this process drags out for a very, very long time. The other thing I wanted to ask if we could look at as part of this review, or that the committee could look at, or it's staff. Is it staff doing the review? Multiple people have raised the issue of confidentiality of complainants to me, and I'm not sure if maybe this is something that someone can just respond to right now, but some people, there's been a situation going on for years and years in their neighborhood. No one wants to make the complaint because they think that their name can be FOIPOP'd, and then that there'll be retribution. So can someone just clarify if that is an actual issue that we need to address, or what's the situation?
Yeah, I can answer that, and then if April, as our FOIPOP officer, wants to add anything, I'll let her add anything to that. So council's policy, as it is today, states that if you want to make a complaint, you are required to leave your name. However, our procedures are that name does not get released. If you make a FOIPOP application, people think, oh, I'll make a FOIPOP application, it'll get released. But we have never released a name under FOIPOP. My understanding is the only possible way that the name would be released is if we ended up in court and the court, through that process asked for the records. We would have to submit those records, but we are not releasing anybody's name under our current practice.
April, do you want to speak to that?
There's not a lot to add to that. Jeff outlined the policy, and as the FOIPOP administrator, that is the process I follow. And the only time that it would be released is if a court proceeding requested all records unredacted, and I would then be obligated to provide those records.
So just as a follow-up, have these cases ever gone to the courts? Has that situation ever happened?
In my past experience, I think I've only had one case that ended up in the court proceedings, and whether or not the court records released the information at the time, the judge, I think, makes that kind of decision on how it's done, but the records I had to release in full.
Yeah, can I just, in my time here, we used to send them to court to get remedy. However, we changed the process because, nothing against the court, but they really have other things to worry about, and we would go through a lengthy process, spend legal time. The court would award in favor. There would be a small fine of $100, and then the property owner still wouldn't clean it up. So we went through all this, and we still have this problem. So in my time, we changed the process and said we have the authority to clean up. So instead of going through the court and spending our lawyer fees, let's spend the funds to clean up the property, and we can use those funds, like we can lean those funds back to the property. Where if we go to the court, our legal fees is gone, right? Like, we're never getting that back. So since probably, I don't know, 2012, we've not gone to court at all. We've taken steps to remedy the property if the property owner's not willing to work with us. So, yeah, it's been quite some time since we've been to court.
Thank you for that background. I think that's helpful in our understanding for us who are new. It's good to know how that all works, so thank you for that. Could we have, do we get a motion on the floor?
Yes.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We will go to one more item before we break, and that is item under Engineering Department, which is washroom options, parks, and open spaces. We'll move to that, and then we will take a break. Just hold your excitement.
Do you have a PowerPoint I'll put up? No? All right. Nope.
See if that's going to work.
Loading. What?
That's what I thought too.
Well, I can't. This one was giving me trouble.
It should be that one, yeah.
I'll keep the power too. Good. Perfect. All right. I'm just going to start out by making note of an error in the report in the agenda package for council. So there is, at the end of the presentation, 2 motions on the floor for council. We'll strike the first one and we'll keep the second. That will become clear as the reasons why as I go through the presentation, but I had made an error in reference to dated version of the park standards and guidelines. And so the porta potty use is a minimum amenity that we do allow in destination parks, and so I will walk through and that will make more sense as I go through my presentation. But again, the first motion in the report we will strike and we will keep the second this morning. All right, so staff have prepared the report in the agenda package and this presentation to highlight existing washroom amenity requirements in the parks and open space standards and guidelines, and then to review the current state in each of our municipal parks, so looking at what we have in place now, and then explore options that can help to guide decision-making for park improvements related to washrooms going forward. So just an overview of the content this morning. So again, looking at what the standard states for minimum requirements for washrooms in our parks and open spaces, looking at the existing conditions within each of the parks by park category. I'm going to have a slide where I'll talk about porta potty use and our CSA accessibility built environment standards. I've done a overview of different pros and cons of washroom types, the 3 different washroom types we'll talk about this morning. And at the end of that, I've come up with appropriate use scenarios for each of those types of washroom options. And then I've prepared information surrounding washroom options that we've carried out research on and have associated costs with each of those options to review as well. And then close out with recommendations from staff. So the current park standards and guidelines list the minimum amenity requirements. Specific this morning, we're only going to be talking about washrooms. So for the purposes of this presentation, the following definitions apply when we reference washroom. That's an inclusive enclosed washroom providing barrier-free toilet, sink, turning space to accommodate a wheeled mobility device. So that is a fully serviced washroom, water, sewer, power. When we reference outhouse, that is a vault privy. So outhouse is a waterless vault, it's self-contained toilet. Porta potty is your mobile or waterless toilet, and that is a service provided by a contractor, and we rent the porta potty units. So looking at each category of park, we have the 6 categories. At the very top, we have our regional parks that in the standard list the requirement to have a year-round washroom or an outhouse available for public use. As we go along, we have destination parks, which require a seasonal washroom, outhouse, or porta potty. Neighborhood parks require a seasonal outhouse or porta potty. There's no requirements for a minimum amenity in our parkettes or at conservation land locations. And then our sport park, again, require a washroom, outhouse, or porta potty under the existing standards that have been adopted by council. So now to look at the existing conditions, what we have and where. So there is no, as you can see, and as everyone is probably aware, no washroom facilities in any of the parks and open spaces. So we just have the 2 columns for outhouse and porta potty. So in the regional parks where we're required to have either a washroom or outhouse, we are currently providing porta potties. The single asterisk in the table indicates that the porta potty is in place year-round at a location. The double indicates parks that are under user agreement and are managed by a community group. So you can see we've got a high use frequency of porta potties, some in place year-round at our parks. So looking at this table of existing conditions, we can see that we aren't currently meeting the minimum amenity requirements for the regional parks as laid out in the standards. And in addition, many of the outhouses that we currently do have in our destination parks are aging rapidly and don't meet accessibility standards. So you can see an example in the photo on the screen. We have an existing outhouse or vault at Miller Point Peace Park. So you can look at that. The dimensions are small, hard to access if you were looking at it from an accessibility perspective. And having reduced space limits users who could be able to utilize that amenity in the parks. And again, those are wooden tops on our existing vaults, and they are starting to age and rot. So to remedy this, we do have recommendations, but before going to that, it's necessary to provide additional information on each option of washroom listed in the standard and provide clarification on acceptable use of porta potties in our parks and open spaces. It's not letting me change. There we go. So there have been questions raised regarding the suitability of seasonal porta potty use in our parks from an accessibility perspective. So we did note ambiguity in the CSA accessible design for the built environment standards, specifically as it relates to their section 8.8.3, which is temporary outdoor toilets. And we did request interpretation from the CSA committee that is responsible for the standard on the use of porta potties. So I submitted photos and dimensions of the existing units that we rent and have in a number of our spaces, and the committee did respond and confirm that the units are currently acceptable for use under section 8.8.3, temporary outdoor toilets. So this was important confirmation for us to receive that these units are deemed to be acceptable as they exist. One thing that it is important to note that this is as it relates to their use on a seasonal or temporary basis. So that's an important distinguishing factor of the use in the spaces seasonally or on a temporary basis. They're not designed to be something that's permanently in a location for use. So going a little bit further into looking into the 3 options that we have in the standard, at the end, decided to put together a table, pros and cons of each different type. And the result at the end is identifying that there is an appropriate use for each type of washroom amenity. It's dependent on a park and its unique characteristics and the services it provides, the amount of time people spend in it, the level of traffic, the location of the park. So all of those are important factors when selecting what a minimum amenity to provide to the public in a space. So looking at this list, I won't read through everything, but in general, looking down different criteria, so the cost of each unit, the cost to maintain it or operate it, how long it takes to set up, so whether it be a porta potty that you can call and have in a park within a few hours, or if we're having to work through and construct a fully serviced washroom, they have different timelines associated with them, different costs, different maintenance requirements. They withstand vandalism to a different degree. Each do things better than others. So you can kind of go from porta potty outhouse to flush washroom from low to high. So porta potties, of course, they're going to be lower cost. There's lower maintenance on the municipality side because they are a contracted service. So a service provider does come and clean those and stock them. As you go through the list, of course, you would work through outhouses and flush washrooms having the highest setup time, maintenance requirements, but they also are the most resistant to vandalism, have the best odor control, and the highest level of accessibility. So at the end of all of this, really what that does is give us some best use cases for each type of washroom. So porta potties. Wonderful for temporary seasonal use where cost control is important and where we have limited space and lower levels of use in a park, and perhaps where we're not providing some of those accessible features in the space as well. So a couple of examples would be like our Indian Path Commons. It's a small parking area that takes you onto a network of trails, of single track footpaths. We don't have a lot of space there. It wouldn't make sense to be putting an outhouse at this stage or even considering a washroom. So seasonal porta potty use is very appropriate there. So for outhouses, they'd be more suitable for year-round spaces with remote areas, high traffic volumes, where we have existing accessibility features, and having that amenity would ensure that you're creating a space that's available to a wider variety of users that can enjoy the recreation experience that the park provides. So again, moderate in cost, and they do have a higher degree of accessibility. For your flush washrooms?
Yeah, before you go on, I think Deputy Mayor Vino had a question, just as it relates to this slide.
Yeah, very specific to the slide, and it's something you had said about porta potties and vandalism. If somebody vandalizes a porta potty in one of our parks, whether that be tipping it over, spray painting it, putting things that shouldn't be in, does that come back to the municipality as a cost, or does the contractor absorb that cost as the owner of the porta potty?
Under the contracts that exist now, they would be called as soon as they may identify it first or staff may identify it first, and they do come replace those units. It is not listed in the existing request for quote contract that those costs come back to the municipality, but there certainly has been lots of conversations around misuse and how those costs impact the contractor, and how going forward that could be something that has to be considered if it continues to become a reoccurring theme. Yeah. So flush washrooms, again, ideal for high traffic, large spaces with a high degree of accessibility in the park, and that would form part of a building. So we're having a built piece of infrastructure in a park. It might make sense to put in a full service washroom there at a site where we already have water, sewer, power. We know those services are high cost to put in a space where they don't already exist. And so it makes sense that those flush washrooms would be something we would consider in spaces where those services are already in place and where they might form part of a larger development that might take place down the road for those locations. So taking that a step further for each of the different categories of washroom options, did research to look at some cost estimates associated with each. Some of them are a Class D estimate. We're looking at taking projects that have been done in other places and transferring that over. So again, some Class D estimates, but we also do have some finer estimates in place that are true costs for some of the options that exist. So I'll go through those now. For the full-service washroom, of course, this is going to be your highest cost. Depending on the finishes, the size, the number of units you install, the location, if there are existing services, these costs can, start out at $500,000 and take you anywhere above the $1.5 million to $2 million range. So very high costs for these types of units. We did look at similar projects done in park spaces in the province, and some of those costs were coming in around the $1 million range. So this is just an overview from the CSA standard that shows, a universal washroom on the one side and a full stalled accessible washroom on the other. So any washroom that would be constructed would be done to meet those standards. And this is, again, just high-level Class D cost estimates of what it would cost to put in a full service washroom in one of our parks or open spaces. We have a variety of options that exist for the outhouse, or those vault options. The first one is a double, fully accessible outhouse option. So it has two sides. It meets all of the CSA standards for accessibility and built environment standards, with the exception of having water, sewer power. It does have a change bench and change stations, both adult and baby change stations within. We have detailed design for this option in place and an associated Class D cost estimate. So this cost estimate that was prepared by the designer, Stantec, who completed this detailed design, came in at $155,000 to construct one of these units in one of our parks or open spaces. So we do have a second option in the outhouse category for a vault option. So we looked locally at prefabricated options that might exist to install accessible outhouses within our parks and open spaces. So we have received pricing from a company locally out of Blockhouse called Cubit, and they do have these prefabricated either 8x8 buildings or 8x16 buildings that would meet the dimension requirements and would allow for the fixtures to meet the CSA standards for accessibility. And this unit is prefabricated, and it would be installed on top of a vault, and then you would have in place, it would form that building sitting on the top. So you'd have two components: the prefabricated building, including the foundations and the installations for a double unit, came in at a cost of $32,000, and then you would have costs added to that for the vaults themselves and the installation of the vaults. So one component of the cost estimate is a refined price from the prefabricated supplier, accompanied by a Class D estimate at this stage of what the vaults and the installation and the additional materials would cost. So looking at a double option, we could be sitting at around $62,000 for a double option of a prefabricated style. The building dimensions are a little bit smaller than option one, and it doesn't have the adult change station in it here, but it does meet all the other requirements and the dimensions of the standards for accessibility. There is also a single option available, so at a reduced cost estimate around $40,000 for a single option for the outhouse. So I should note that the materials in both cases for both styles, whether it be option 1, 2, or 3, are all have been selected to be low maintenance, easy to clean and sanitize, and to withstand vandalism. So this unit itself has their composite aluminum exterior and roofing, and the inside is an FRP panel, which is a fiberglass reinforced plastic panel, and that's for minimal upkeep, easy to clean, and the flooring is the same material but textured for traction. And then, of course, we have our seasonal porta potty use. So these are, again, rentals. They're a contracted service depending on the duration of a single unit in a space. The cost can vary. So if we typically service a unit once a week, we're looking at $2,500 for a year, serviced weekly, or for a season, which is the true intent of these style of units, it's $1,500 for a park season to have one singular accessible unit serviced weekly. So looking at all the information, how does that tie back into park standards and projects as we move forward? So the recommendations that we've put together are such. We have in our regional parks category that as these spaces are developed, we're looking to add accessible outhouse option or a washroom if the conditions were appropriate for a washroom implementation in those spaces. So as upgrades are undertaken in those spaces, it's the recommendation that we also allow for those amenities to be put into place. And to bring the destination parks along, as the existing outhouses reach end of life, we propose to be replacing those with one of the accessible options that are presented today. And as parks are developed to add features of accessibility, replace that seasonal porta potty use with a permanent accessible outhouse. And then, of course, to continue with seasonal porta potty use in spaces where that is appropriate. So of the recommendations that are linked to a motion that would be on the floor today for council, the current approved capital budget includes project funds for a double vault to be installed at Indian Falls Park. This upgrade came as a recommendation from the accessibility audits, as the park has a high degree of accessibility along the existing trail network and is in a remote location and sees high levels of use. In addition, a project is currently underway which will add accessible trail connections, picnic area, and park furnishings. So considering the information presented in this report and the option to install a prefabricated unit at a reduced cost compared to a unit constructed on site, staff recommend that council proceed with the project as laid out in the 2025-26 capital budget and install Vault Option 2, which is a double prefabricated unit.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this really valuable and detailed report. First of all, for me, it outlined where we're deficient and the fact that there's just not equity in how we've made, decisions around adding washroom facilities to our parks. And this helps to align our future decision-making with the standards that are in place. And I think that will be very helpful for council, our council and councils in the future, to have this as a reference document, which outlines a clear assessment of the needs in individual parks and what the options and appropriate options are. It is also really helpful to have that benchmark for costing, and I'm really glad that we took time to have staff go back and look at the options for several reasons. One, we can potentially now, with that budget we've set aside, look at significant expansion of offering better quality washroom facilities in our parks by really digging in to what some options might be. And secondly, that we found a local supplier that can do this. I think that really speaks highly to your work and to the efforts that staff made to really look at the concerns that were voiced at this table about the cost was incredibly high. I too was incredibly shocked by how much we would have to invest. And secondly, that we found a local supplier. I think that really speaks to the opportunities that can be presented by really digging in and really looking for local suppliers. So my compliments on bringing this forward, and I think it will be very useful as we go forward. So I'll open it up for discussion, and then we will get to the motion because there may be questions about clarification around some of the issues. Councillor Hubley to start, and then Councillor Brooks.
Just a quick question. I want to make sure I'm following the presentation correctly. And the cost for the Vault Option 2 is $62,000, correct?
That is correct. So for the building unit and the foundations that it sits on and the installation costs, that is a fixed cost of $32,000. There is some unknowns on the final costs for the purchase of the vault units and a contractor to install those. Those would go in first, and then the company would come in and put their prefabricated building on top. So that there is an element of the $62,000 that is a Class D, but the building portion itself and that installation is fixed at the $32,000.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Brooks.
I just want to say thank you so much. This is exactly what I had hoped would come back. This is the kind of report that for me as a councillor, I get the full conversation, and what was missing previously was a full conversation. So I really appreciate the detailed work. I don't need to reiterate what the mayor said, but this is the kind of solution. It gives us a pathway to the future to know where to target the parks that are going to be first to be served. And I think it's an excellent document. I hope we use this kind of thinking going forward, preparing other documents. It was excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Thank you for all the work on this. I'm just wondering with the prefab versus the other options, if there's any concern about materials depreciating more quickly or needing to be replaced earlier, or maybe having a shorter lifespan. Is there any concern there?
No, the materials, even with the finishings on the interior, are very comparable. I would say we'd have to do a more finer, refined look into it, but given what the Qubit product is constructed of, it might be more robust.
Other questions? Councillor Smith.
I just wanted to ask, are we going to talk more about Indian Falls specifically, or should I ask those questions now?
So there is a motion on the floor to authorize staff to proceed with the project as laid out in the budget. The intent would be then to come back with the final motion with the confirmed costs of the installation of a double unit. So if we were authorized to proceed, then we would go and put together and search for a contractor to do the installation of the vaults and come back with the final request to award to that contractor from council.
We don't have the motion on the floor yet, but if you want to ask specific questions about Indian Falls, I think Maria has outlined the next steps to that. This was to provide an overview with a recommendation on a general direction, and then the specifics of the costing would come back to us.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, because as much as residents in my area really, really value that park, and I think, you know, the park has a broad, you know, value across the district. People are also frugal. So I have been waiting to see, you know, a more affordable solution. And I think people will be happy to see that. And just to say that park is very well used, and the porta potty situation is not good. Like, we've got this little porta potty in the corner of the parking lot with people coming and going, and it's just it's not a great solution. So having something that is more permanent, that blends in a bit more with the surroundings, that's accessible, and maybe where people can get changed. There isn't really, especially when you're going such a distance to a park, because I know people travel quite a distance to get to that park, having a place to change that isn't, you know, a confined stinky porta potty. I mean, I know it's still an outhouse, but it is a step up from the porta potty situation. So yeah, I'm really happy with this direction and happy to support it moving forward. And I think that my community will also be quite happy with these what's been laid out.
The Qubits are really, if you haven't seen one, they will suit our park setting very well, I think, the look of them. And yeah. Any other questions, or could I ask someone to put the motion on the floor, please? And it's the second motion. Counselor Smith.
To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council authorize staff to proceed with the Indian Falls Accessible Vault Toilet Capital Project as listed in the approved 2025-2026 capital budget for a double waterless vault toilet with a prefabricated building. I so move.
Seconded by Counselor Bell. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We will take a 10-minute break. We will resume our meeting, and we'll go back to the Engineering Department and Conqueror Bank Wastewater Collection System Inflow and Infiltration Project Update. Mr. Feener.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. We are here to provide an update on a previously completed project related to the Conqueror Bank wastewater system. Back in November of 2024, Council approved a motion to award the inflow and infiltration repair work to Eastern Trentless Limited, a New Brunswick-based company, for $52,000 plus net HST. During the course of the work, 2 additional leaks were identified that were not part of the original scope. These leaks were significant and allowed excess water into the collection system, resulting in unnecessary treatment costs for the municipality. As Council may recall, a public procurement process was undertaken, but no bids were received, making it difficult to secure a contractor before the onset of poor weather. Given the potential for higher future costs, staff decided to proceed with having the contractor repair the 2 additional leaks while they were still mobilized on site. This additional work resulted in costs exceeding the original contract amount by $13,557.18, including net HST, which will be covered by wastewater reserves. While staff would normally advise Council in a more timely manner when the project costs exceed the approved budget by more than 10%, this update was delayed due to an oversight.
So there's no action required on this. I guess it's just questions if Council wished to ask anything. Councillor Brooks.
Just a question on when we go out to something like that and we get nothing back, is that usually a price point, or they're concerned about taking on the project? Can you give me any insight on that, when we generally get nothing back?
I mean, there could be a number of factors. We wouldn't know for sure because we didn't get any responses, but it could be, availability. Obviously, contractors would have work already planned, so this particular, I guess, type of repair was unique. What we did this time, we asked for like a request for proposal process where we've asked contractors to suggest the best remedy to repair what we've known for leaks. So in this case, I guess it's a little bit of a specialized work that was more cost effective than saying digging up people's yards and stuff. It was a little more specialized with confined space and the way that they did the repairs. So locally, nobody, I guess I'm not aware of local contractors that would have used that process. So these people were in the area at that time, so we were able to secure them through alternate procurement at the time.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thanks. We'll move on to Finance Department and the capital variances for Q4. And Ms. Wenzel, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. As part of our year-end procedures, this is kind of one of the first things that I bring to Municipal Council. As we work through our year-end, one of the things we look at is financing our capital projects. So what we bring to you, or what I bring to you, is how we've done it and looking for Council to approve it. So we look at it, first we look at what we've budgeted. And then if there's any changes that can occur when a project's completed over budget or new sources of financing are found. So we've provided a table of summary of all the projects compared to budget in this report. So it also serves as your kind of fourth quarter variance report to show you where we ended and landed at the end of the year, and the proposed funding of the capital and the Canada Community Building Fund funding, because we do need a council motion to approve that every year. So many of the projects were budgeted to be funded from reserve funds. So under Section 99.4 of the MGA, council approval is required for all withdrawals from capital reserves. As well, council must approve the CCBF expenditures as per the funding agreement. So compliance occurs when council approves a capital budget that shows withdrawals from reserves to fund capital expenditures. When funding changes are made at year-end, council should be made aware of them and approval should be sought. So that's why we're here. So several of the projects were completed under budget, some over budget, reevaluated, or deferred to a future year. Of the $11.5 million approved in your 24-25 capital budget, projects in the amount of just over $5.6 million were completed. Financing of the projects included $2.3 million in provincial and federal grants, $1.4 million from general operating reserves, $189,000 from depreciation reserves, $387,000 from sewer reserves, $112,000 from open space reserves, $43,000 from climate sustainability reserves, and $25,000 from an old Service Nova Scotia reserve. So CCBF, a Canada Community Building Fund spending, totals just over $1 million, consisting of contributions to non-owned trails, rural broadband project costs, paved shoulders on Martins River, and a small adjustment to paving costs for the South Side Road that was previously claimed under the CCF agreement. So, as well, we came across a little snag at year end because we had taken another fund that we were given a couple of years ago called the Sustainable Services Growth Fund. That was about $1.2 million. And we were going to put it against the Cookville wastewater treatment plant. However, we've kind of got new funding for that as we move forward. We got the municipal capital grant funding, and we also were allowed to take the ICIP pedestrian bridge funding and reallocate that to Cookville and beautification here in the Osprey Village sidewalks. So in order to get that money spent by March 31st, 2025, which was part of the SSGF agreement, I looked back at, okay, what did we take from our own reserves last year that we could apply to this? So we had a couple of big projects, the Osprey Village Trail Connector and the New Germany I&I, that were eligible under the SSGF, and that I could just report, okay, we'll use the SSGF for that and just reallocate those monies back into our operating reserves where we took them out. I did contact the province. They don't want a motion for this funding reallocation, but I think it's important that you know kind of how we did it and how we decided to move the money. Anyway, so this is our recommendation to ensure compliance with the MGA and the federal CCBF agreement.
Okay, thank you for that. And we do have a motion relates to that, so I'd ask someone to put that on the floor for discussion under 11.2.1. Councillor Hubley, thank you.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move the municipal council approve the funding for the 2024-2025 completed capital projects and CCBF investment as presented on the 5-year capital investment in Canada Community Building Fund plan, and I so move.
And a seconder for the motion, please. Seconded by Councillor Burns. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We will move on to the mayor's, deputy mayor's, and councillor matters, and a report from the LCLC, and I think Councillor Hubley will present that today.
I do. I have it. I will. Thank you. The following reflects the highlights of the LCLC meeting held June 19th, 2025. A strategic planning session is scheduled for July 10th. There will be a follow-up with the outcome of that session. Financial statements for April and May were reviewed. It was noted that they are within budget. A motion was passed to accept the statements. A motion was passed for Mark Flint to explore the possibility of Nova Scotia Power installing EV chargers at the facility. An update will follow and more information is available. On May 24th, the ice resurfacer failed again, and despite staff efforts and the installation of a rebuilt motor from the inventory, the resurfacer remained non-operational. In response to the urgent situation, the town of Lunenburg generously loaned the LCLC their propane-powered Olympia on short notice. We're currently using this machine to maintain our ice surface. However, this is a temporary arrangement. The approved 2025-2026 capital budget includes an allocation of $200,000 for the purchase of a new ice resurfacer. The LCLC has received $150,000 in funding from the Department of Community, Culture, Tourism, and Heritage to support this purchase. The quota cost for the new ice resurfacer from Zamboni is $205,325. In addition to this, there will be a small fee for an electrician to install the charging unit compatible with this machine. Staff are currently exploring available rebate and incentive programs related to the purchase of an electric model to help offset a portion of the total cost. Although the current machine has not been reliable, new batteries were installed in 2022 at the cost of $30,000. Staff will research the current market value of the machine and proceed with disposing of the surplus asset. A motion was passed to approve the purchase of the new ice resurfacer. Due to the delivery being 10 to 12 months, Zamboni will provide a loaner until the new Zamboni arrives. Table and chairs have been ordered for the Galleria. ETA is approximately 6 weeks. The UV unit for the play pool has been ordered with an anticipated installation of this summer. The planning for 55-plus games continues. The circus had great attendance, 400 people for the first show, 300 for the second show. There's lots of positive feedback regarding the event from circus personnel and the people that attend it. The facility remains very busy with 40,000 more people through the doors 2024 versus 2025. This has not trickled to the membership numbers, but does show a sign of people making the LCLC a habit. The membership total for May 2025 is 1,874. Recruitment efforts are underway for 2 operator positions and a few summer roles. Upcoming events include Movie Night in the Arena, Parkview Grad, and Bridgewater Canada Day events will be held at the LCLC this year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. That's questions from Councillor Smith. That's a very complete report, and thank you, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Hubley is chairman of the committee, so that was a good report. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thanks for all those details. It's really helpful. I was just wondering if you had any more detail about the charge stations. I've had questions about that, and just like what is the goal for replacement? Like, is there any kind of timeline or?
There isn't a timeline right now. We've been overwhelmed and very busy with so many other things happening, and this option came up with Nova Scotia Power. I don't know a lot about it. Mark Flint is going to check into it and bring back information, but what we've heard is that Nova Scotia Power would install and maintain these chargers, so it'd be no cost to the LCLC.
And would they be like you'd pay a charge? You'd pay a fee to charge
there's
there?
no cost to the LCLC. We also don't get any revenue from these chargers either. They install them, they maintain them. That is all I have for information on that until the report does come back.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Councillor Hubley? Okay, we'll go to Deputy Mayor Vino.
So over the last several weeks, I've attended multiple municipal planning strategies meetings, which also included our final one of this phase last night in Riverport, agenda briefings, and all other meetings as assigned. It's been a busy month of meetings.
Thank you for that. And to my report, last night, as Deputy Mayor Vino has mentioned, was the conclusion of our first round of meetings on municipal planning. And our Deputy CAO just passed me a note to say, I'm very happy to say that we had more than 850 people participate in our sessions. And that's, if you think about that, that's an average of 85. If you just take the simple math, that's 85 people at each meeting. And we know that that was skewed a bit by some of the meetings that were very well attended, much higher numbers. But I think it really does provide us with a really important basis on which to go forward with our planning strategy. I want to thank all of you, the councillors, for your participation and support and involvement in hosting and responding to residents at those meetings. Thank you to our planning staff and our Manager of Communications and Engagement, Sarah, for their work in adapting the format of the meetings, leading the discussion, and engaging in conversations with our residents. They worked really hard on this, and responded very well to the concerns we had about format and how we could get better engagement. And I think in the end, people were telling us they really liked the format, and the combination of a short presentation and then individual engagement on the issues proved to be very productive, and I think gave planning staff really concrete direction in terms of the specific areas that we heard in the first couple of meetings that were of concern to people. This is a first important step in creating draft 2 of our municipal planning strategy. There is much work ahead, but this is a very important restart to the work on municipal planning. There are clear differences in the concerns and issues we heard about from the northern part of the district through to Tancook Island, and I really look forward to having the What We Heard report that will detail the findings of each meeting. I feel very grounded in my understanding of the issues, having talked with so many people, and those conversations supported the initial concerns that I had about Draft 1. I look forward to our continued work on this initiative, and I remain convinced that our collective effort with such strong public engagement and input will provide us with a much better municipal planning strategy. I participated in a Regional Emergency Management Organization Governance Committee meeting. It's a very long title. There are primarily 3 issues of concern to the REMO organization that we have within our region. One is around voting structure, which, with the addition of Lunenburg to the organization, the agreement around the voting structure hasn't changed to reflect a larger number of members. The second point is around accountability, and there are issues if we do have an emergency, whether and staff from different areas don't respond to the emergency, the costs associated with that from backfilling from other units, who should bear those costs, and that becomes an issue and was an issue in one of our emergency responses in the past. So that's an issue that needs to be worked out. And thirdly is around the budget approval process, which personally seems very cumbersome to me and very lengthy, and I think others recognize that, so it's a point of discussion. So these will be points that we'll be bringing forward in future meetings. I attended a community meeting in Kingsburg on the Fire Smart program. This was organized by the Kingsburg Residents Association and led by the Riverport and District Fire Department. There was good attendance and useful information provided by the fire department on the work to plan for fire events in the area, and that was really at the request of the homeowners and the association. How they would manage emergency vehicles on private roads, especially when you've got a series of trucks called to an incident, how that would be managed. And so the fire department is working very diligently on the process and the planning around responding to fires on different roads and mapping that all out and communicating that to residents. I did attend a webinar on deer control. I know you're laughing, but this has been raised by a number of people as I campaigned and since I've been elected as your mayor. And when this was offered, I thought this would be something, at least was a start in my level of understanding about what we could possibly do here. It was offered by the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities and led by the Department of Natural Resources. Deer control efforts are in place in both the town of Truro and in the town of Yarmouth, and the issues associated with deer populations are a serious issue in many municipalities. There were a lot of people at the webinar, including ours, particularly in certain areas through our district. It was interesting to learn that the province is developing a program for municipalities to use in controlling deer. And it would appear the province is not willing to manage the issue and is providing guidelines and requirements for municipalities to follow if they want to carry out deer control initiatives. Just one more download. Some councillors and I joined the mayor and councillors of the town of Bridgewater for 2 evening chats, I'll say, chats by the river in the first case and at the mall in the second case. An opportunity for us to work together in answering questions from residents, because people from the municipality come to town, and often the town councillors were encountering discussions with residents who weren't their residents, and so we worked together to host this, to work together on this event. So it is something I think is useful, and we'll look to do it in the future as well. We hosted the regular meeting of the mayors and deputy mayors in the district, and where we had, I think, a very productive discussion around regional economic development, advocacy on cell phone coverage, and there was agreement from some of the other units to help us in doing this, and also recognizing that they too had issues, for example, the town of Lunenburg. And and the final item we talked about was the rollout of marketing levies in the county on overnight accommodations. In closing, I want to recognize that this is graduation week for many students in our district. I will attend ceremonies at Parkview Education Center and at the French School just across the road this week. And congratulations, and Kathy Moore will attend graduation in New Germany. So congratulations to the graduates and their families. Stay safe and enjoy the celebrations. And that would conclude my report. We are moving now to an in-camera session, and I'll ask for a motion to go in camera at this point. Moved by Councillor Smith. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hubley. Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Motion is carried. We will move in camera.